What if one of Alexander the Great's greatest cities did not fall in war, did not burn, did not collapse in rebellion, but simply vanished? Because a river moved. For more than 2,000 years, its streets were silent. Its harbor disappeared. Its walls sank under mud. Its name survived in ancient texts, but the city itself was gone, lost, forgotten, erased, until now. In 2026, archaeologists announced they had identified what many believe is Alexandria on the Tigris, a major city founded in Alexander's era, hidden beneath the shifting landscape of southern Iraq. And what they found changed everything. This was not a small colony, not an outpost, not a ruin of broken stones. This was a metropolis, a trade giant, a city that once linked Mesopotamia to India, a city built for empire and destroyed by nature. Tonight, we walk its streets again. 323 BC, Alexander the Great had conquered lands stretching from Greece to the Indus. Most kings would have stopped. Alexander did not. He wanted more than victory. He wanted a connected world, a world joined by cities, by trade, by power. That was why he founded cities across his empire. Many carried one name, Alexandria, but one Alexandria stood apart, near the waters of the Tigris, close to the Persian Gulf. At a gateway between river and sea, Alexander saw opportunity. Ships could move goods inland. River traffic could reach ancient Mesopotamia. Sea routes could reach Arabia, India, beyond. This was not random. This was strategy. He chose a place where geography could create wealth, and there, a city began. Alexandria on the Tigris, built not just as a settlement, but as a machine of trade. Imagine arriving by ship, the harbor crowded, sails rising over the water, dock workers shouting, cargo moving, spices from India, wood from distant coasts, precious stones, luxury goods, grain, oil, everything passed through this city. Because this was where worlds met. Goods came by sea, moved to river, moved inland, moved west. The city turned movement into wealth, and wealth into power. Merchants lived here. Sailors passed through. Officials collected taxes. Craftsmen worked in workshops. Markets filled the streets. This was not a frontier town. This was one of the engines of the ancient economy. A city alive with motion, alive with sound, alive with ambition. And for centuries, it grew. For generations, scholars argued over where the city had stood, with many believing it had been destroyed beyond recognition or buried so deeply under mud and shifting river deposits that it could never be found again. Some even thought it had completely vanished from the map of history, surviving only in ancient writings while its real location remained a mystery for centuries. Then everything changed when modern technology entered the search. Instead of guesses or legends, scientists began using drones to scan the landscape from above, while geophysical instruments looked beneath the earth without digging, and surface mapping started revealing patterns the human eye could never see. Slowly, something impossible began to appear beneath the soil. Faint outlines first, then larger structures, until the shape of a planned city emerged with fortification walls, a grid of streets, industrial zones, temple areas, canals, and even a river port, all forming the outline of a lost metropolis hidden for more than 2,000 years. At that moment, what was once only theory or ancient storytelling became something real, something still resting beneath the ground, buried but preserved, waiting to be understood again. Imagine looking at those results on a screen, lines and shapes forming a full city plan, and realizing you are staring at the footprint of a civilization lost for 23 centuries, a city people once thought might never be found, now returning piece by piece through science, evidence, and the earth itself. That is the kind of discovery archaeologists spend their entire lives hoping for, and it is exactly what happened here. Not in myth or imagination, but in reality, where a forgotten world began to speak again from beneath the soil, reminding us that this was never just about ruins, but about recovering an entire lost chapter of human history. Now picture morning in Alexandria as the first light of dawn spreads across the Tigris and the city begins to wake. Sunlight glimmers on the river while ships enter the harbor, their sails catching the wind as dock workers prepare to unload cargo from distant lands. Temple smoke rises into the cool morning air as priests begin rituals, while nearby market stalls open one by one, filling the streets with movement and sound. Metal workers hammer bronze in busy workshops. Potters shape fresh clay on spinning wheels, and merchants arrange spices, textiles, oils, and precious goods brought through the trade routes that made this city rich. Children run through narrow streets between stone houses, laughing as they weave past traders and laborers, while officials stand near the docks watching cargo arrive, recording goods, protecting order, and collecting taxes. Everywhere there is motion, purpose, and human life. This was daily life in Alexandria, not monuments frozen in silence, not ruins broken by time, but people living, working, bargaining, building futures for themselves and for the generations that would follow. Families would have shared meals in shaded courtyards. Craftsmen would have taught their skills to apprentices. Sailors would have carried stories from distant ports, and travelers from different lands would have brought languages, beliefs, and ideas into the city's streets. History often turns cities into stone, reducing them to walls and ruins. But cities are human before they are anything else. They breathe through the people people who fill them. They move through the trade that sustains them, and they struggle through every challenge of survival and growth. And for hundreds of years, this city lived in that rhythm morning after morning, generation after generation, believing it would last forever, as all great cities do, never knowing that the river which gave it life would one day help erase it. And then slowly the enemy came. Not armies, not invaders, not a fire from the sky, just water, moving in a way that no one could fully stop. The Tigris began shifting its course little by little, first almost invisible, then impossible to ignore. Its channels changed shape, sediment built up. Old water routes weakened. Paths that had once carried ships, goods, and life toward the city became harder to use. And that was the cruel truth of Alexandria on the Tigris. The very thing that made it powerful was also the thing it depended on most. This city lived because of water, because of the river, because of trade moving through the harbor. But once the river started moving away, the city's strength slowly turned into weakness. Without river access, trade began to weaken. Without trade, wealth started to fade. Without wealth, the power of the city began to decline. The harbor, which had once brought life, noise, and movement, slowly began to die. Ships could no longer come as easily. Merchants looked for better routes. Workers had less to carry. Markets became quieter. Streets that had once felt full of life started to lose their sound. And when a port city loses its port, it loses the reason people built it in the first place. The decline did not happen in a single day. It may have taken years, perhaps even generations, but step by step, the city became less useful, less active, and less important. Families moved away, businesses closed, public places emptied. The streets that had once echoed with footsteps and voices became silent. The walls began to crumble. Wind and rain wore down the stone. Dust and mud covered what was left, and finally, the earth began to close over the city like a heavy blanket. A great city was erased, not by an army, not by a conqueror, not by violent destruction, but by geography itself. A river created it. A river supported it, and in the end, a river helped destroy it. That is what makes this story so powerful, because it reminds us that even the greatest cities in history are not always defeated by human enemies. Sometimes, nature simply waits, shifts, and slowly reclaims what people once thought would last forever.
Eternal.
Now imagine the city coming back to life. In front of us is reconstructed Alexandria on the Tigris, the great city linked to Alexander the Great, rebuilt in full scale as if history itself has opened its doors again. The camera moves slowly above the river, then glides toward the harbor, where ancient ships wait beside long stone docks. Wide streets stretch across the city, lined with temples, courtyards, workshops, and market stalls. People fill the scene. Merchants carrying goods, workers moving through the port, travelers passing beneath tall columns, and families walking through the open streets of the old metropolis. The city feels alive again, not as a ruin, but as a powerful center of trade, culture, and movement. Water glimmers beside the walls. Canals cut through the land, and the huge harbor reminds us why this place became important in the first place. This was not just a city built by chance. It was a city shaped by strategy, ambition, and the vision of Alexander, who understood that control of trade and river routes could change the future of an empire. The whole scene feels hopeful, grand, and emotional, because we are not just looking at broken stones anymore. We are seeing a forgotten world restored in light, color, and motion. Every building, every street, every ship tells the same story. This was once a city of power, and now, through modern reconstruction, it stands before us again. It is a reminder that history can disappear for centuries, but it can also return not as a rumor, but as a living world we can finally see once more.
How much for the pottery? 2 denarii for the lot.
Now imagine the city returning before our eyes, not as a ruin hidden in silence, but as a full living world restored in light, color, and motion. We are looking at reconstructed Alexandria on the Tigris, the great city linked to Alexander the Great, rebuilt in full scale, as if the past has opened its gates once again. The camera begins high above the river, then slowly glides forward toward the harbor, where ancient ships rest beside long stone docks in the water, reflects the soft glow of the sky. As we move deeper into the city, wide Hellenistic streets appear, lined with temples, courtyards, storage houses, and market stalls. People fill the scene everywhere. Merchants carrying goods, workers unloading cargo, travelers walking beneath tall columns, children moving through the streets, and families gathering near open courtyards. The city feels alive, busy, and powerful, exactly the kind of place that once connected Mesopotamia to distant lands through trade and river routes. Canals cut through the land, the harbor stretches wide beside the walls, and every corner of the city shows careful planning, strength, and ambition. It is easy to see why Alexander's name became tied to such places, because this was not a random settlement. It was a strategic city built to control movement, commerce, and influence. The sunlight falls across the buildings in warm, golden tones, giving the whole scene a hopeful and majestic feeling, as if history itself is being reborn in front of us. This is not just about broken stones or old maps. It is about a forgotten world coming back to life, about a city that vanished for centuries, and now stands before us again in perfect detail. Every wall, every ship, every street, and every figure in the scene reminds us that the past is never fully gone. It only waits to be seen again.
View 3 silver for the vase. Make way for the procession.
This is bigger than one city, because Alexandria on the Tigris changes how we understand trade, empire, and the idea of ancient globalization. It shows how deeply connected the ancient world really was. People often imagine early civilizations as isolated, separated by distance and difficulty, but that picture is incomplete. Goods moved across vast regions, from one end of the known world to another. Ideas traveled with them. Languages met and blended, and cultures influenced each other in ways that shaped entire societies. This city helped make that possible. It was not just a place on a map, but part of a network larger than kingdoms and greater than borders. Something like the backbone of early civilization itself, and perhaps most importantly, it reminds us how much is still hidden beneath the surface of the earth. So much history still lies buried, waiting to be discovered. There are cities we have not found yet, stories we have never heard, an entire world still resting underground. That realization alone is astonishing, because it means the past is not fully known. It is still unfolding, still waiting for us to uncover it piece by piece.
Drachmas for the silk. The pottery is cheaper here. I will give you 3 coins for the tablet.
Imagine walking those streets now, digitally reconstructed, with walls rising again, the harbor restored, temples standing, canals filled, and ships returning as if time itself has reversed. For the first time in 2,000 years, the city lives again not in stone, but in memory, in science, and in imagination. This is what reconstruction truly does. It does not just show ruins, it revives entire worlds that once seemed lost forever. And suddenly, Alexandria on the Tigris is no longer just a forgotten name from ancient texts. It becomes a real place. A city you can almost hear, almost touch, almost step into. That feeling is powerful, because it reminds us that discovery is not only about understanding the past, it also reshapes the present. It changes what we know, expands what we can see, and transforms what we believe is possible, showing us that even after centuries of silence, history can return and speak again in ways we never expected. Think about it. A city built by Alexander the Great survived for centuries, vanished under layers of mud, disappeared from human memory, and then returned because archaeologists chose to look beneath the earth. It almost feels impossible, yet it happened. And maybe the most haunting part is this. How many more cities are still waiting to be found? How many kingdoms lie buried under rivers, deserts, jungles, and mountains? And how much of human history is still missing from what we know today? Alexandria on the Tigris gives us one powerful answer. The past is not gone, it is hidden, and sometimes it comes back. A river erased this city, but history remembered it, and now so do we. If you enjoyed walking through lost worlds like this, consider subscribing, because the next forgotten city might be even more unbelievable.
Alexander the Great.